Have you ever wondered what lies beyond the world of the game? I have. As I age, that question has taken multiple shapes. From a childlike wonder at the magical world unfolded before me, to a rational but obsessive fascination with these constructs derived from the human mind. A game, and the question for that matter, can have multiple interpretations. Both from a rationale and an imaginative viewpoint, this video aims to answer the question, what is it that lies beyond the world of the game? The first time that question has come to mind was playing GTA San Andreas on the PS2. It might seem insignificant, but I think it's one of the core reasons as to why we see games differently from childhood to adulthood. It's only fitting it's the first game I remember to inspire that feeling of curiosity beyond the world of the game. At the time, there were no bigger game than GTA San Andreas. The map wasn't only big though, it was so varied and parts of it inspired curiosity. They had a certain creepy eeriness to them. When are games more than just games? It's weird, but I've never seen a game inspire urban legends like GTA San Andreas did. From aliens to ghosts, some real and hinted at by the game, but others weren't. To this day, I think some people still believe that the Bigfoot's in the game. It wasn't. Just a prank that spread and was given a life of their own, but the atmosphere of the game inspired that. It looked normal for most of the time, but every now and again some area would give off a weird feeling. The Back Beyond Woods is one of such places. The name itself already implies, pretty on the nose, the whole atmosphere they are trying to set up here. But funnily enough, most of the creepiness of the place was achieved unintentionally. It's the place rumored for the sightings of the Bigfoot, inspiring a worldwide hunt for the creature inside the realm of the game. If you were one of such people, exploring the woods alone at night, desperate for a glimpse of it, weird things might start to happen. You might, out of nowhere, get chased and run over by a car, only to then realize that the driver's seat was actually empty. Ghost cars are a bug, now known by the community, a result of the game spawning vehicles in an empty area, but it added greatly to the already creepy atmosphere of the place. When are games more than just games? Well, when they transcend beyond pixels and codes, when their world merges with our own, when the community adds to the product of the developer. Games are more than just games when we make them more than just games. The modding community, for one, fits that description as a physical manifestation of that concept. Skyrim is probably the most modded game ever. The vanilla experience is great, but the complete experience is viewed to have the contributions of the modding community. Some of Bethesda's oldest games, like Fallout New Vegas that I'm currently playing, have mods as almost a requirement to play, as they improve the experience and adapt it closer to modern standards. The community contribute to the game, making something they love their own, but the basis of it doesn't require us to physically contribute to it. It's the concept that we, as fans, by sheer wonder, build the game in our minds to be something more. GTA San Andreas was something more. Since I was a kid, games fascinated me. Now I know that games are made by someone and for someone, but back then I didn't think of them as products of someone else's imagination, and more like they were an extension of mine. I didn't immerse myself in the experience of games, and more like use them as a tool to immerse myself in my own imagination. The story was insignificant because I made my own. With that came a whole new world of possibilities. You see, in my head, games weren't made, they just were. Little sandboxes filled with undiscovered potential and infinite possibilities. Worlds. And thus, just like the thousands of generations before me, it took roots the inherent human nature to question and wonder about the universe. If this is a world, what lies beyond? To me, the world of the game was magical and filled with wonder. anything was possible. It went beyond just pixels and codes. A world where real and fantastical met, and creatures of myth hid in the shadows. If GTA San Andreas represents a place in real life, then maybe I could go anywhere in the game. Rumors surfaced to corroborate my theory, and I was intrigued. I started to use codes to spawn the Hydra jet plane, and I would fly it into the horizon in the search of something more. I would do it so often that I still remember the jet plane codes by heart to this day. If you'd asked me back then, I would swear to you that with enough effort, flying long enough, if specific conditions were met, I could fly to Rio de Janeiro, the place I was born. My searches would prove fruitless, but modern versions of the game would flood the market, claiming to be the ones to take me there, and so the search went on, buying a new version and trying my luck on the horizon. I must have bought like 6 versions of GTA Rio de Janeiro before I gave up on my quest. GTA San Andreas was probably the first game to inspire that curiosity and the feeling that anything was possible because of the sheer variety of things I was able to do in that game. And it was also when I learned that games have their limits. Getting older, we live less in fantasy and more in reality, and that reflected how I played video games. Little by little, that magical feeling that anything was possible began to fade, substituted by a more rational view. My imagination was still fertile, but using it became an active effort rather than a natural psychological response to the world around me. As I write this video, for example, I need to think and wait so that inspiration comes to me and I can translate it into cohesive, interesting storytelling. It may seem sad that we lose some of that, but it's a natural process that happens to us all. And with it, there was a different kind of fun to be had. I would immerse myself in the experiences, dive head deep into the world and know the characters, their personalities, their reasons and goals. The world of the game, for that limited time, became my own, or rather, I would become a part of it. And after the games were over, that beautiful immersion I had cultivated and tended throughout the whole experience, well, I would break it. Breaking the game is nothing new. We all do it to some capacity, testing the limits of the game to see how far we can push it before the machine gives in. It might mean something simple like spamming the interact button on an NPC to exhaust its dialogue options, or it might mean breaking the physical limits of the map and falling into the unending void. The first time it happened to me, I was speechless. A sea of unending nothingness beneath half-structures that now feel devoid of substance, empty. The unnerving, ever-present feeling that I was not supposed to be there, this reality behind the curtains. Exploring this area, the out of bounds, became an interest of mine. Somewhat recently, I have become addicted to these boundary break videos made by Xyz. In the videos, he makes to the out of bounds of games, and we get to see remnants of their development, closer looks at models that were only supposed to be seen from afar, background processes that load areas in as we are distracted by something else. It made game development feel experimental to a certain degree. Kinda like a theater or a park ride. The player being the main focus of the experiences, the protagonist of the world's events. Events that happen around and because of them, triggered by their actions. If in one of these rides you see a dinosaur's head, chances are that that's all there is to it. There's no reason to spend extra resources making something that the audience won't see or interact with. It also made me appreciate when developers go the extra mile just for the love of it, even if sometimes the player won't even be able to appreciate it. Most of the time when you see a wall in the game, that's all there is to it. A thin layer of wall filled with emptiness, like skin without meat and bones, or a theater prop, two-dimensional, only existing from the perspective of the audience. The void, covered and hidden by carefully positioned structures, still manages to creep in through the slightest of misalignments, ever present, ever barely hidden. Seeing that area means the breaking of immersion, the worst thing that could happen when you're trying to experience a story. But maybe it isn't. Games like Alan Wake 2 show us how the act of involving the player in the narrative, the breaking of the fourth wall, can bring the story to new heights instead of disengage the player. Alan is trapped in this warped reality beneath a lake. In this place, real and fiction become one, and Alan's writings shape reality. Alan serves as an in-game representation of the game's own writers. The story he writes can have an unrealistic happy ending because it would be alienating to the readers of his book and, by extension, to us, and it wouldn't work. The game's narrative evolves through in-game cinematics and live-action scenes. Sometimes those scenes even overlap in the middle of gameplay, giving a contrasting and beautiful aesthetic. Alan talks to us as if we were readers of his book. Sam Lake, who writes and directs the game, plays multiple characters, including a version of himself. Dream, game, and reality merge inside the world of the game. The fourth wall is broken, and even though we are not the protagonists of the story, we, as players or readers, matter to its conclusion and have roles in it. Those characteristics help to blur the line between reality and fiction, bringing their reality closer to ours. Creator and creation are brought together in multiple ways, and our world seems to be just another one inside the realms of the game. The narrator's grasp reaches beyond the world of the game, in a sense, and it takes advantage of our knowledge that we are playing a game to heighten its own story. But I always thought, what if a game could take advantage of that concept in the gameplay department, the knowledge that we are inside a construct? Two of my favorite games do that beautifully. Assassin's Creed Black Flag is one of them. All Assassin's Creed do it to some capacity, but Black Flag is my favorite and probably the one that better demonstrates this. In the games, there's a machine called the Animus, used to access the life of your ancestors. We use that machine to fill the shoes of someone from the past, live their life. Your character in the game doesn't have a name, just a research analysis whose nickname is apparently Noob? Didn't remember that, kinda offended. Noob is a silent protagonist, and when controlling him, we engage in the first-person perspective, as opposed to the usual third-person perspective of other characters in the franchise. Silent protagonists are usually used as a tool to immerse the player into the story. We literally fill the shoes of the protagonist. Their voice is supposed to be our own. It's a tricky concept to pull off. I think best used in RPGs because it gives the player agency in the choices of the protagonist, making it really feel like our own actions and choices. But it has been used successfully in other types of games. It's just that there needs to be extra care in the main character's actions as not to create unwanted dissonance between the character and the player. I say unwanted because that dissonance can be used as a tool for impact when done right. A silent protagonist is an interesting idea for a present-time section of Assassin's Creed because it gives us the possibility of playing both as ourselves and as a defined character within the world of the game. But maybe if we were given more agency, it wouldn't feel like Noob has no personality and we could really project ourselves into the character. In the previous games, we've had Desmond Miles, who is a pretty strong protagonist, which makes the contrast even clearer. But still, it's a really cool concept. The voiceless protagonist with a vague nickname is used to project the player into the role of Noob, and the first-person perspective enhances that. Noob's more an idea than a character, a will to resist this evil corporation by interacting with the Animus and finding secrets. Not a character interacting with it, but we, the players, in the first-person view, using the machine to dive into the life of someone else. Even the menus we interact in the game are the menus from Animus. We pause the game because Animus allows us to pause the simulation. The limits of the map, the invisible walls we find in the games, are the render limits of the machine. When loading inside the Animus, we can freely control our character in a low polygon area, both serving as a transition point between the real us and the characters from the past, and serving as a reminder that we are entering a simulation, waiting for the game world to render, a world made to to experience the life of someone long gone. Every time the game doesn't allow us to do something, like killing innocent people, it can use the excuse that we are living in the shoes of someone else, someone with personalities and beliefs. We are trying to do something that they didn't or wouldn't do, breaking the simulation. Even though we have control over the character and we are the ones outside the animus, entering the machine, you are not in full control. You feel the role, but the actions are someone else's. In Black Flag, this person is Edward Kenway, a pirate and eventually a member of the Brotherhood of Assassins. We sail the seas, hunt whales and sharks, upgrade our ship, engage in naval combat. We board other ships and subjugate the crew. You heard that, Ubisoft, we board. How could they mess up a game when the perfect blueprint was already there? It will never not be fun for me to be able to live the pirate fantasy, fight off ships, board them, and duel with dual swords, then claim the ship, elect a captain and send it away to accomplish missions under our banner. It really does tick all the boxes. We spend most of the time in this world, immersed in the fantasy, but the game constantly reminds us through these little details that we are inside a simulation and that, even though we see it sparingly, there is also a story unfolding outside the animus. It constantly reminds us that we are playing a game and uses that, something that could be immersion breaking, to enhance it by having an in-world lore explanation for the game's own limitations. When you hit an invisible wall, you won't think the game only allows me to go this far. You'll think this is the limit of the animus. Maybe Ezio Auditore didn't leave Florence at this moment. Maybe Edward Kenway wouldn't kill people without a reason. The other game is Outer Wilds. It has one of the best implementations of that concept. Outer Wilds is a space exploration game. It's lonely and contemplative for most of the time, with brief, warm moments of companionship. Similar to Assassin's Creed, you follow the story of someone from the past, but instead of feeling their shoes, you follow in their footsteps to find out what happened and why they aren't around anymore, trying to break a loop that ends with your death. Also a game with a silent protagonist, but the game does a good job of making you really empathize and put yourself in the shoes of the main character. You explore these planets and follow the breadcrumbs left by a long gone and far more advanced civilization, the Nomai. It's an environmental puzzle game, but instead of a literal puzzle standing in your way, you are given a whole solar system to discover and understand. Areas can only be accessed if you find out how the planets work, and you do it by using logic, critical thinking, by figuring out from the messages and clues left behind by this civilization, or sometimes trying to brute force your way in. In the DLC, Echoes of the Eye, you're given another planet to explore. After finding the hidden planet, you'll be faced with a hangar submerged in darkness. Ships can be seen all over the place. Upon further exploration, you'll find text in a language you can't translate. This is off-putting, to say the least, because you've been translating all my text the whole game with no problem, so why is it that you can translate this one? Why is it different from all the others you have found, and why is it that this planet is so well hidden? The overwhelming darkness of the hangar and the creepy atmosphere is a prelude to what lies ahead. One of the primary themes of the DLC is the contrast between light and darkness. We use light in most of the puzzles. Light powers the machines, whilst darkness brings them to a halt. Massive spoilers for the DLC ahead. If you haven't played it, I advise you to jump to the timestamp on screen. If you have played it or have no intentions to, keep watching. I can't stress this enough. Not only did it manage to become one of my all-time favorite games, but the DLC is one of the best ever made. We leave the dark interior of the hangar to enter the bright open space of the planet. It kind of reminds me of the one from Interstellar, probably better described as a ship rather than a planet, an artificial construct made to emulate a natural landscape, a mechanical marvel that displays an incredible and advanced knowledge of gravity and technology. But the place is in ruins. Buildings falling in pieces and a strong, destructive and dangerous current of water, a result of the deterioration of the dam over time, ravages the place. something has gone terribly wrong. Eventually, you'll find a secret room with several dead creatures surrounding a bonfire. If you fall asleep in this room, you'll wake up fully immersed in the dark. Their bodies gone, only a lantern to light your way. These creatures are the Alk, and they are the people whose breadcrumbs will follow in the DLC. You'll quickly find out that dangers lurk in the dark. The main game has some light horror elements, but the DLC manages to take it to a whole new level, and it feels even scarier than a horror game because it is unexpected. In this dark, dreamlike reality, you need to explore whilst being aware of the zombie-like Alk hunting you down. If they catch you, they'll blow out the fire, sending you back to the room with the dead corpses. The lantern, like in any horror game, is essential to your survival. Use it to guide yourself in the darkness and turn it off to hide from the enemies. The brilliant thing about this implementation is how quickly the horror can be stripped away once you know what's actually happening. I told you how one of the main themes of the DLC is the contrast between light and darkness, something that has been explored in media for a very long time. In the 17th century art movement Baroque, the contrast of light and darkness could mean the opposition between good and evil, natural and unnatural, divine and earthly, knowledge and ignorance. Another central theme of the DLC is the concept of metamorphosis. Breaking Bad illustrates both these notions perfectly. The composition of scenes that highlight the opposition of light and darkness signals the duality of Walter White and his alter ego, Heisenberg, the dormant beast that lurks within. His whole life could be summarized by the opposition. The contrast of Walter living a normal, boring life whilst being a Nobel Prize winner. The mundane against the extraordinary. One of the greatest chemists of their time, but only a high school teacher now. Walter has been stepped over countless times and little by little has created this resentment inside that we can see from the very first episode. Metamorphosis signals change, transformation, a chemical reaction. Walter even teaches us in the very first episode. We learn that nothing is lost, everything transforms. Things don't cease to exist. Matter is broken down and rebuilt as something else. When you boil water, fire triggers water's chemical reaction from the liquid to the gaseous form. When faced with death and the revelation that he has cancer, Walter's change is triggered. The death of the former and the birth of the new. The near-death experience that triggers the chemical reaction of his change, and Heisenberg takes the reins, little by little. Metamorphosis. The Alk used the dream world as a form of escapism. The thing is, we discover that their world isn't mystical or magical, but a product of their own. A digital structure, not unlike a video game. Similar to reality, but just like the planet itself, artificial and man-made, or owl-made. When faced with certain death, the catalyst for their change, they decide to fully transcend to the digital world. As their bodies perish, their conscience remains in the digital realm. As time goes by, their conscience begins to corrupt, decay. Little by little, they change into primary beings. Both of their worlds, contrasting ideas. The light of the planet signaling knowledge, the natural and good, whilst the digital realm's darkness signals ignorance, the unnatural and evil. In the digital realm, they use the light from our artifact to find us. The light source of the artifact is a flame, and it's very telling. A flame often signals passion or anger, but it has been used to represent the soul. The flame of the artifact, a physical connection between our world and the digital one. If we die in the digital world, or our light turned off in either of them, we are brought back to the real world. It represents life in the digital realm. The Alk's bodies are gone, decayed. Their soul resides in the digital realm alone. Whilst our soul, still connected to the real world, burns bright, their light dims over time, corrupted and weaker. The flame, for them, it's the actual manifestation of their souls. If it's turned off, like when the dam bursts and floods the place, they just cease to exist. If in the main game we use knowledge of concepts of physics to guide our path, in the DLC we use rules defined by game development. The main character of that game and the anchor to the rendering of the digital world being the physical representation of ourselves in the digital realm, the artifact with the flame. If we just do the most unthinkable thing you can do in a horror game and just leave our lantern behind, you'll be met with a world not fully rendered. A look behind the curtains, a simple digital structure removed of the textures and artificial darkness that made traversing so difficult, with a clear visualization of the AUG's, now only digital beings or NPCs, path. It's brilliant because it not only reflects in themes like the escapism provided by video games and the dangers of unrestricted technological advances, but it also makes use of the knowledge we have of game development to manifest their own rules and logic. We progress to our final destination by taking advantage of the limits of the digital or game world and even using bugs in our favor. The main game's message of facing reality and acceptance is highlighted even more with the contrast of the opposing idea in the DLC, the escapism chosen by the AUG people. What lies beyond the world of the game? The cold and rational truth is nothing. It's a world of data and numbers. Everything that exists is made to be experienced. Everything beyond it is a waste of effort. Breaking the game's boundaries brought me to the light, taking away part of the mystery and magic of games, a chemical reaction that changed me on a fundamental level. Before I knew this, the world of the game seemed infinite and full of possibilities, and now just a product made to be experienced. Imagination and wonder killed by rationality and knowledge. But that's not entirely true now, is it? Maybe that's what people investing in games think, or the ones just trying to turn a profit. But games as an art form are so much more than that. Making this video, I came across a comment made by Escape the Goat, the kid who originally posted the GTA San Andreas Bigfoot footage. He conveyed his happiness in finding that so many of us were impacted by his video. He's now 30 years old and gets to reminisce, like many of us in the comments, of the good old moments of wondering about what secrets lay hidden in that game. People weren't mad it was all a lie, or questioning it even. They were just glad that he contributed to making their childhood just a little more magical. It was a lie, but one that made all of us a part of the game. Each game presented signals a barrier humankind has come across. The darkness, the sea, the sky, the depths and space. They prompted us to wonder what lies beyond, and being kept in the dark has fueled our imagination. In Alan Wake 2, we are central to that story. Our perception matters and the world of the game is woven into our own. The lines between them, blurry and confusing. Assassin's Creed Black Flag gives the player a digital version of themselves, a vessel for our actions and will, and much like Outer Wilds uses video game concepts to bring the player closer to the story. Maybe the reason we enjoy when games acknowledge the player is that we feel just a little bit more like we are a part of that world. It's a tale of escapism, unable to be contained within their own medium, breaking the boundaries of the game. It applies to the AUG people running away as much as it applies to us, playing the game. What wouldn't we give to live in their world just a little longer? Even if no monsters existed in the sea, if no hidden city lies beneath the waves, no secrets to find in the sky or even beyond our world, the search itself was as exciting as the realization. So even now, knowing the raw truth, even if it doesn't sound as appealing, that nothing lies beyond the horizon, the fact that I'll never reach Rio de Janeiro in GTA, that beyond the boundaries of the game lies a world of nothingness, I still find myself amazed by video games. I might not have that innate ability to imagine and immerse myself in it anymore, but games and the opportunity for modding give me, in their core, the exact same experience. The developers poured their blood, sweat, and tears into the project. There is a passion behind it, an impulse to make something remarkable. And where there's passion, rationality takes the back seat. So even if it's crazy, even if it doesn't make any sense, sometimes the Bigfoot is real, sometimes the woods are haunted. Sometimes if you look for it hard enough, secret lands can be found just out of sight. Games are more than just games when they transcend their physical limitations, when we become a part of them as much as they become a part of us. They are imagination given form, and we get to contribute, whether by directly adding to the experience or from the meanings we attribute to them. As long as we have an attachment to games, they remain unlimited, ever expanding, full of possibilities.